How you doing? So, first a little bit of an explanation. It turns out I took a whole bunch of great GoPro video over the last 3 or 4 days, and last night when we tried to transfer it over, none of the videos would open. So I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but you're not going to get a lot of footage of us riding in this video. But instead what we're going to do is just very quickly kind of recap a little bit of where we've been over the last few days and show you some pictures and stuff along the way. So we're going to start with, we're going to kind of do launch day from Centerville. So we left New Brunswick and went to St. John, and then we went from
We left Centerville and went to St. John.
St. John to Centerville, then, Centerville to St. John, then St. John to, we took the Digby Ferry, and we ended up in Halifax that night.
Well,
right?
outside of Halifax a bit.
Outside of Halifax that night, and then we went from there to Halifax. So let's do that. We'll do that. So 3 days. We're going to cover 3 days. So, first of all, launch. Any thoughts on launching from Centerville? Hey, we're back in the saddle again. We got our key. We got our bikes loaded up. Pack horse is ready to go. There's Grammy D in the background there. If you see her, this is our house in New Brunswick. And yep, we're ready to actually launch. This is what we consider the launch of
A freaking Canadian motorcycle odyssey.
Yeah, so the plan today is Fredericton to see my mom in long-term care, stop in there for a little bit, and then on to St. John for an Airbnb, which will position us well to get up early tomorrow morning and catch the ferry to Digby, Nova Scotia. So
yeah, we have to be there at 7 a.m. So
yeah.
we're only 6K from the ferry.
Yeah, so that's the plan. The weather looks decent, might get a bit of rain, but better than we hoped, so let the odyssey continue.
Take care.
Later.
Pretty uneventful.
It was a sort of rainy day, rain off and on, and we tried to take a lot of, we actually blasted down the highway for a while to Fredericton, saw my mom in long-term care, which went about as expected, and from there we took a sort of back way from Fredericton to St. John, down a lot of the Fredericton Junction and a lot of the back roads, which was really nice. Yeah, the road is in mixed repair. It's a little bit of a tough road to ride, but it was through the woods. There were nice curves. We saw deer, which is always a mixed blessing when you're on a motorcycle. You have to be very careful around deer. But overall, it was a nice ride. And we ended up in, it was kind of uneventful. Nothing really. There was a nice little restaurant we stopped in.
Yes.
That was kind of cool. Yeah, where was it?
It was nice.
Somewhere
very
between
good
Fredericton
food.
and St. John. Nice people again. That was great. And it was really nice pulling into St. John. I had great GoPro footage. I'm not going to whine about it, but it was beautiful. So at any rate, we ended up at there was one sort of funny thing in the St. John thing, and we should have taken pictures of the first place. I forget the exact name. Do you remember the name of the street?
The street was something extension park.
Yeah, so there was like, let's call it Park Street. So there was a certain number Park Street extension that our Airbnb was. But our nav took us to that number Park Street. And when we got there, it was this big blue house that nobody had done any repair on, and I would say 40 to 50 years. The paint
looked
was
like stuff
peeling,
was piled inside. Yeah.
It was really kind of scary, but we were of the mind at that point, well, that's our Airbnb, and we knew we looked for a cheapish one. So we thought, whatever. And then we tried to get in, and as we were trying to get in, this woman came out and talked to me, and I said, I think we're staying here. And she said, no, you mean Park Street Extension. That's down the road and around the corner. She was very nice.
Yes, she was.
Which is fantastic. And so then we went to Park Street Extension, which was a much nicer place.
Very nice.
Yeah, and it was Ron and Anthony's.
Tony,
yeah. They were the super hosts of the Airbnb. And, they had really just, there's going to be a bit of a theme to this one, which is how nice some people are and how great it is when you're nice to others, the return you get. And so they had actually, I think, cleaned a space in their garage so that we could park our bikes in the garage overnight. And,
which was amazing.
For security reasons, that's nice. For if it rains, that's nice. It was just really, really nice. And so thank you, Anthony. Anthony was the one, or Tony was the one we spoke to most of the time, and he was fantastic. Nice little place, basement apartment, nothing fancy. Well, I had a big screen projector TV.
It was quite nice.
It was good. So that was fantastic.
And we went out to get some stuff out of our motorbikes, and behind the garage we see a deer.
Yeah.
And we go for a walk, and we're coming back, and across the street from the Airbnb there were 4 deer eating on the lawn across the street. This is right in the city.
Yeah, it turns out, although it's a city, this family of deer hang out there. So we'd actually met Anthony walking his dog on the street. I think of him as Anthony, not Tony, but I'm not sure. Okay, so Tony.
Never saw Anthony.
And yeah, he told us we saw the deer, and we were like, oh, there's a whole bunch of deer. And he's like, oh yeah, they just kind of hang out here. And we were like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool.
Then on the way to the ferry the next morning, we saw another one.
Yep, saw another one. And so if we go to the next day bright and early, we were shooting off to the Digby Ferry. It was just a short. There was some construction in St. John, so we had some fun with the navigation to get there. But we got there. We were actually planning on setting up our little camp stove and cooking coffee, because we've been in these ferry lines before where you get in a line and then you just wait. But everybody was still in their cars. Nobody was sort of, getting out and doing stuff. And in fact, they loaded us up not too long after we got there.
In about 15 minutes.
Yeah, and yeah, we were loaded up. Had some great footage of that too, but too bad. Can't see it. And I think, okay, this leads to the next sort of part of the story I think I want to talk about a little bit, which is, while we were on the ferry, we met Craig. And it's just that he was another motorcycler, and we both had climb gear on, and we started talking about that, and we were up in the above deck where the wind was blowing and all this stuff, and we were talking about how great the gear was, and we started talking to him there, and then came inside, talked to him a little bit more. You want to give a little bit of the story of Craig?
Well, Craig was on kind of a journey. His son had died a few months ago, and then his best friend died, and he was going around the province with their ashes.
Well, not just the province. He left
Windsor,
Niagara.
Ontario, Niagara in Ontario.
Yep. He'd done a lot of the same sort of roads as we had. He came through the States, and he was now coming in towards Nova Scotia, and he had 2 vials of ashes, one of his son and one of his good friend, and he was visiting some of the places they both loved, spreading some of the ashes at those places, and just doing what some people call a ghost ride, kind of coming to grips, I think, with his own emotions, and taking them with him maybe for one last ride. We had a really poignant chat with him. His wife was extremely supportive. I loved his phrase. How did he put it? Do you remember?
No.
Something like, you have to marry up, or he was smart. Oh yeah. He was smart to
Lucky
marry
I married up.
Right. He kept talking about how fantastic his wife was and understanding. She was worried about him. He was riding solo. Which is, I understand why somebody would be worried about that.
A long journey.
And especially because she knew he was emotionally fragile, and he himself said he's just waiting for that moment at some point when he collapses into a pile of blubber or something like that, and he's holding it back. So, that follows something that Neil Peart, the drummer of Rush, did, the so-called Ghost Rider, and there's a good book about that, and that's what he was doing on the Ghost Ride. So it was great to talk to Craig. Fantastic. I hope you're doing well, Craig. I hope you're watching, and all the best to you, and maybe we can find an excuse to ride back in Ontario at some point. That would be great. So that took us to Digby, and from Digby we were originally going to go to a national park, but once we'd posted the videos, I posted them to a number of my contacts, or I didn't post it, I shared the link with a number of my contacts, and one of them is a gentleman named Steve McKinley. Steve McKinley is a reporter for the Toronto Star, and I would say, from reading a lot of his stories, and you read some of his forest fire stories now, he's a really exceptional writer because he cares. He's given the latitude to choose the stories that he cares about, and you sense that in his writing, that he puts a lot of time. He really tries to get to the complexity of a story and convey that. And at any rate, I'd worked with Steve, and he said, if you guys want, you can come crash at our place or my place. We're always looking for ways of making this trip a little more economical, and plus we like to meet new people. So we picked up a bottle of wine, went over to Steve's place. He cooked us a great meal.
Delicious pasta.
Added a bottle of wine to our bottle of wine. Both of those kind of disappeared.
It was a fun evening.
It was a fun evening, and it was. I mean, the tricky thing was, it turns out he loves music and loves making music, and he and I ended up talking too late into the night. Well, not too late, but we were up to, I think you said
After
3 a.m. Sue was smart enough to crash. But it was great. Had a really great visit. Really enjoyed my time with Steve and our time with Steve. It was good. But then we launched that morning, and we knew we were just going to Halifax, and Halifax wasn't far from where we were. So we had the time to kind of go down to Peggy's Cove area. And again, on the relationship sort of front, we stopped at the memorial where the
Swiss memorial.
Yeah. You want to carry on?
No, go for it.
Okay, so you meet people, right? You just walk around, but every now and then a conversation becomes a deeper conversation, and of course they were interested in what we were up to and all our gear and stuff, and so we met
two couples. We met.
Yeah, so one of the couples lived now in Nova Scotia. The other couple was visiting from British Columbia.
From Chilliwack,
and we had a good chat with them, and it turns out they were interested in motorbikes, and they came back to our motorbike, and we were chatting a little bit more, and here's a picture of them. They're really
well,
nice
at least the lady from Chilliwack is a rider, or used to be.
And the guy, the smart ass kind of guy, I quite liked him. He was making jokes about various things. This guy with the beard, he also was a rider, and so they kind of understood, and just had a great chat. But the really interesting thing was, well, we were chatting with them, and then you started chatting with somebody else from Nova Scotia. It's just this sort of
who was an emergency room nurse and was delighted that we were fully geared up.
Yeah, she thought we were doing it right, we were doing it safely, which was nice. And all of that culminated in the couple from British Columbia said, well, hey, if you're coming through British Columbia, let us give you our number and connect, and you can come stay at our place for a couple nights. And by the way, we have a swimming pool. Will this happen? I'm not sure. We said we'd at least get in touch with them and have a coffee. We don't want to be too presumptive.
We're not positive we're going through Chilliwack.
Yeah.
It'll depend on where we decide to ride.
And in that vein, let me also mention, we also had a chaplain from the RCMP who lives in, Medicine Hat,
near
Alberta,
Medicine Hat,
who left a comment on our website inviting us to stay at his place. So this is becoming a really kind of cool theme where we get to meet people like we did with Steve, and we hope we're going to be able to do some of that as well. But all of that day ended with us going back to Halifax, where we actually splurged on a luxury 2.5-star hotel in Halifax, and we did so because we knew we were going to end the day by having dinner with our niece Chantel and her husband Dave and their two adorable kids. Yeah,
Carter and
Ireland, and we hadn't seen either.
We hadn't met the kids at all.
And Carter was now...
And hadn't seen Chantel since her wedding, so... Yeah.
It had been
before
a while.
The pandemic, well before.
And so again, relationships, it was a great chance to this time, bond a little bit with family and get to hang out with them. And they offered to cook us a vegetarian pizza, and it turned out, we didn't know this, but it turns out Dave's on a bit of a mission to master the art of making pizzas. And in fact, he made 3 pizzas for us. Just a basic margarita pizza with basil and tomato, which was great. One with mushroom, like 2 or 3 kinds of mushrooms and onions on ricotta cheese. That was great. And another one that was a pesto pizza with a bunch of veggies. And good job, Dave. He nailed it. And he just fantastic crust. He actually throws crusts in one. Yeah, that's the whole. It was really, really well done. Obviously, he takes these things seriously. I think he's a kind of a competitive guy when it comes to making pizza. He does a lot of cooking. So, at any rate, we had a great evening with Dave, Chantel, and the kids. Got to know the kids a little bit, which is always nice. Got to hang out with Stella, their dog, which makes me also, by the way, just do a backtrack. When we were in Peggy's Cove, we also met
Caleb,
another dog, a Rottweiler.
14-month-old.
14-month-old Rottweiler, and we lost our dog a little in September, and we knew we wanted to do things like this trip, so we weren't going to rush out and get another dog. But now when we meet dogs, we see them as therapy dogs for us. and he was one, and Estella is one as well, and so it was great to see them as well. And given we were in Halifax, we also had time to bum around Halifax a little bit after Chantel and Dave's, and I think we were in quest of a bottle of water, if I remember, at convenience stores. But it was an excuse to walk around, see some of Halifax, and that was really nice. And I think that takes us to the end of this video.
We knew we were going to be up early this morning, so we didn't stay out late last night at all.
Yeah, so we'll continue with another video explaining where the heck we are now and how we got here. That comes next. So for now, peace out.